It's no secret that competition in the labor market right now is incredibly fierce. And with that comes difficulty or frictions that recruiters and talent acquisition specialists face, hiring managers even face when they're trying to recruit people into their organization. There's a bit of a stalemate or a gridlock that's happening right now with the labor markets, where we're dealing with unprecedented people quitting their old jobs, unprecedented number of job openings, and trying to understand the underlying dynamics of this helps, of course, in figuring out what the best next step is in terms of how do you attract people to your organization. But also understanding this is important from a competitive standpoint. So once you realize, okay, these are the 3-4 things that candidates are looking for in the marketplace, you can probably make your hiring and your talent acquisition a little bit more efficient if that's even possible in this market. But more information, the better, of course, with any of these situations. And in trying to develop these 3 kind of key recruiting frictions right now, we went ahead and talked to our partners at some of the leading boutique executive search firms in the country, specializing in different things. So technology, manufacturing, supply chain, luxury, retail, to try and get a sense of what's happening at the front line of recruitment and what's happening at the front line of talent acquisition. And so the very first piece of feedback that we received was that there's very strong opinions regarding work from home and office hybrid work structures right now. And with anything, this actually adds a layer of complexity to a negotiation in general. So not only do candidates right now understand the leverage and the power that they have in that dynamic. I mean, if you imagine a seesaw that's got the power of labor on one side and the power of the company or the organization on the other, this might be the first time in a long time that's actually shifted towards labor, and they have more power than organizations. You can see that just in the idea that there are 10 million job openings. If you travel anywhere around, at least where I am, or in any of the cities with people that I talk to, there are for hire signs absolutely everywhere. And companies are going out of business. I've spoken to individuals who've had their businesses go under just as a function of not being able to find enough workers. So talent understands their leverage right now. And that, of course, makes things tricky from a talent acquisition and a recruitment standpoint, especially if you're competing at a level that's not just price or you know, maybe not just employer brand. You've almost got to look at the entire thing and how your organization competes kind of on a macro level. But going back to the original point, so work from home, office, hybrid, those work structures have a microscope on them right now from the candidate's perspective. For the last 18 months, people have developed their own habits and have developed their own preferences, you could say, with regard to how they want to work. And that then extends out to what they're looking for in an organization. So as a recruiter, for example, as a headhunter, you're not only dealing with individuals at the level of compensation or benefits or things, sign-on bonus, things like that. You now also have to match up preferences for work structure or work arrangement. That adds a level of complexity to a negotiation. And then any additional level of complexity, of course, over and above just the basic ones, which would be salary, I'd imagine, just make things difficult. They make things harder and delay things. And when there's delay, that adds another level of complexity. So that's one thing that recruiters and people in talent acquisition need to understand is one of the main determinants for candidates at the moment. And the quicker you can alleviate that or address that during the negotiation standpoint, during the negotiations proceedings, the faster the negotiations will go. The second main recruiting friction is to do with vaccine requirements and COVID-19 policies. There are, of course, strong opinions and thoughts and preferences around vaccines and things like that, but candidates are placing a lot more attention or a lot more focus on the retroactive aspect of how a company dealt with COVID-19 initially. What programs and policies and initiatives did they put in place, and making an extrapolated decision or an extrapolated opinion on the company based on those initial moves. And so you tie how a company is addressing vaccine requirements at the moment with the retroactive perspective, and you have a very complicated, very difficult negotiation from a recruiting and a talent acquisition standpoint if you're dealing with an individual who's, say, perfect on paper and perfect in terms of experience and what they bring to the table, but maybe has a differing vaccine preference or a differing COVID preference for in terms of policies than your organization has right now. So you can just imagine that level of complexity and that layering now of a few different things. So you've got the work arrangements level 1, vaccine requirements level 2, and you've got a very difficult, very start-stop negotiations process there that can be elongated and very long, and that's definitely a main friction. The third is that there's this sense in the marketplace right now, especially on the candidate side, that somebody will pay me more money. So you've got really dramatic increases in compensation and benefits competition between organizations. And so again, kind of going back to that initial point, because candidates understand the leverage and the power that they have when it comes to negotiating, they can draw out a recruiting process, which hurts basically the organization that's hiring, and it hurts the headhunter or the recruiter in the middle, and also actually probably hurts the individual too, because despite what the perception is around pay bumps at the minute, there's data out there recently that shows that the average is really only about 4, 5, 6% that the people are actually getting above what they used to get, and that's really no more or less than what you would typically get from just a standard promotion for the most part for most organizations. So you see this structure now to where, because there's personal preferences and then marketplace competition and then kind of the sticky, messy aspect of vaccine requirements and COVID policies, that you have a very difficult recruiting environment. You throw in the fact that organizations are struggling so desperately for talent, and talent actually understands that and understands the leverage there. You've got a macro environment that's incredibly tough. That's not to say that people aren't shifting jobs. That's not to say that headhunters cannot be successful in this kind of an environment, but there needs to be a realism about the efforts, and then an addressing of certain key frictions to make sure that the process is as effective and smooth as possible. So hopefully that's illuminating in terms of some of the conversations that we're having with our recruiting partners and headhunters, just to showcase some of the real big main recruiting frictions at the moment in the marketplace, and how your organization can address them to smooth out that process.